I just gave you the secret to life, any guys listening. And every woman listening is probably like, hell yeah. Hello, we are Andy and Emmy. We've been dating each other for about 6 years at this point. We are both into self-improvement. We're both into BDSM and kink, and we date and sleep with women together, telling you about some of the stuff that we enjoy so that you can figure out what you enjoy. Let's talk about sexual bucket lists, young lady. Why would someone want to write a sexual bucket list or a BDSM bucket list of some of the things that they want to try?
I think it's a nice way to give you something to work towards during sex, or something to work through, a way to explore without having to think about it every time. Because I think sometimes when you get down to it, you end up just having sex without thinking about it. And this is a nice way of like, oh, here's this list, let's check some things off. It kind of keeps you exploring, keeps things interesting, helps you facilitate trying new things.
Yeah, and it's a nice effective way of figuring out what you want, what the other person wants, and then sort of coming together and sharing your bucket list with each other and seeing if there's some overlap. It's a nice way to sort of get the conversation going. A lot of people are a little nervous to talk about some of the things that they're into, some of the kinky things they might want to try, and having it all sort of written down and then sharing that or sharing parts of that list with someone else is a nice sort of segue into these conversations to have a kinkier, more fulfilling sex life if that's something that you're into.
Yeah.
People can go to bdsmtest.org. It's probably the easiest way of having a conversation or figuring out what you're into when it comes to BDSM. But on top of that, you can sort of just think, you can watch movies, you can, if you're looking at porn, you can look at porn and different types of kinks and things that people get up to. You can sort of just let your fantasies run wild. You can read erotic fiction, but you can kind of just start with some of the basics. And I think the basics that we like to start with are things like blindfolds, vibrators, toys, ropes, just the gentle stuff.
Yeah. Anything that you could get in your local adult shop.
Adult stores or adult shops, like sex toy shops, are a really good place to start. You can, if you're dating someone already, if you already have a partner, you can just take your partner there. And it's okay if you're both a little nervous and giggly and shy. I was the first few times I went.
And I find often in adult shops, the sales assistants are always super friendly and just like
They're
super
so
open.
nice, yeah.
And I think sometimes for people that are a bit more shy, you're like, don't talk to me. This is embarrassing. Like, leave me alone.
Yeah. So many times, if you ever go into a sex toy shop on a Friday or a Saturday, especially at night, there will be copious groups of like young girls, usually like, 18 to 21, that are in there that are looking at everything and giggling nonstop and just being like, hee hee hee, oh my God, what's that? Hee hee hee. And pretending that they're not in a sex toy shop and pretending they have no interest in any of this stuff and just they're in there for a laugh. And you'll see guys do the same thing. Like groups of guys will go in there and be like, oh bro, look at this, haha, this is, and they're pretending that they're not into it. So it's okay if you're shy, it's okay if you're nervous, we were, but sex toy shops are a great place to go and kind of figure out what you might be into. You can kind of just look at all the toys and be like, okay, what the hell is this? And some of it's just weird stuff. It's not weird, but like the first time you see it, you might be like, what the hell is this weird thing? I have no idea what this is or what this does, but that can be a fun place to start with.
And often for the more kinky stuff, there's often a section that's like away from the vibrators or the dildos or the fleshlights or the porn. And it's just like kink stuff. And that's where you'll
BDSM
find
stuff,
Yeah, the handcuffs, the blindfolds, whips, paddles, all sorts of little bits and pieces.
Yeah, and even if you're not into BDSM, like you're not into the ropes and blindfolds and all of that, just being in a sex toy shop, you can figure out vibrators, you can look at blindfolds, some of the more like, I guess, vanilla, the more gentle, like kinky stuff. And so that's a great place to go. In terms of identifying boundaries and limits, because that's the other side of the sexual bucket list or the BDSM bucket list equation. You might figure out what you're into or have a think and see what you're into, but there's also the idea of, or the side of, here's what I'm not into. Here are some of my limits, some of my boundaries. Sometimes boundaries are things that only come up once you try something, and you might try it and say, I don't really like this. But you can also sit there and sort of have a think about some things that might be off limits to you.
Yeah, and if anything, having like two separate bucket lists that you each then swap and share, I think that can be a nice opener to talking about those boundaries, because you might see something on your partner's list that's like, oh, I'm not into that.
Yeah, like they might have something in there like, anal play or something. And you might just say like, no, I tried that once, or I'm not interested. Our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ said like, do not stick it in the butt, and I respect that. Did Jesus ever say that? I don't believe he did. I believe he said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I don't know if he said,
don't have butt sex.
Yeah, don't stick it in the butt. I don't know. I'd have to ask Jesus. Well, I'll call him up and see what he says. But
I think another helpful thing talking about boundaries and things you might not be into. I actually recently completed the BDSM test for a video. And I found that was a really helpful one as well, because it's a sliding scale for all of the questions. Like, are you into this? Does this turn you on? Are you into the idea of
Like
these?
how much does this turn you on? Rather than it just being a yes or no. A lot of
Yeah.
people look at kinks and they're like, I am into that or I'm not. But there's sort of a spectrum. Like you might be a little bit into that or willing to try it.
Yeah, and there's definitely lots of things that are a bit more extreme that you might not have thought of. And at the end, it gives you a big list of things that it like kind of profiles you as being into this or not into this. And just going to the bottom and seeing the things that you've got like a very low score for is probably a good way to gauge whether that's something you are or are not into.
Yeah. And again, with some of this stuff, even if it doesn't seem like you're super into it, if it's with a partner that you trust, maybe someone you're in a relationship with or someone that you've just been dating casually, but you trust each other, you might, and again, play this by ear as to what you want to do, but you might be willing to try some stuff, even though it's like down the bottom of that list of things that you want to try. Maybe you think you're not into it. You try it, you go gentle, you take some baby steps, and again, only do that if you want to. But you might find, wait, this is actually hotter than I thought it would be. I'm really into this. That has happened so many times with your kinks, with my kinks. And the opposite sometimes happens. You might have something on your sexual bucket list or your kink bucket list. You go and try it and you go, wow, I don't like that.
Yeah, funnily enough, some things seem to be like for fantasy alone, and maybe the
And
idea
then you
gets you
try
off,
it
and then in
and
practice, it's not that good. But even like, there's even now some things that I like as a fantasy in my mind, but then I have no interest in actually playing them out because I know I probably wouldn't enjoy it.
Do you want to give some examples?
I think sometimes I have more extreme like degradation fantasies or more extreme pain fantasies or sometimes like cheating fantasies that are like nice to play out in my brain and they can get me turned on, but in practice I'm like I have no interest in this. I know I'm not going to enjoy it
Yeah.
in practice.
We went to a talk, like a presentation. It was at a sex convention. Yeah, and there was a woman who was giving a talk about studies that had been done on human sexuality. And she said a lot of the time people will have fantasies about something that they would never in a billion years do, but it's something that really turns them on. And cheating is a big one. Yeah, I've had fantasies of like, you're walking down the street, you see some attractive person, and a fantasy comes in your head of like, man, imagine if I could just like push my girlfriend to the side and grab this girl and just like we have crazy, wild, passionate sex in the bushes, and then I come back and like you have crazy fantasies. They're kind of like intrusive thoughts, I guess you would say. They're a thought that just appears in your head. You don't choose to have that fantasy, it's just there. It's what you do with the fantasy that sort of, I guess, matters. And so, yeah, you might have fantasies that you would never do in a billion years. That's okay. That's part of being a human.
And I find it's often when you're in the middle, like you're horny, you're in the middle of masturbating or in the middle of sex.
Yeah,
like you're
and your
horny,
brain goes crazy.
Yeah, and all of these taboo things pop into your head. And while you're horny, you're like, that's so hot. Oh my God, that's so taboo or off limits. And then afterwards you come out of it and you're like, that was just like horny me being silly.
Yeah, you come out of it and you're like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be a good Christian girl. Like, why am I thinking about these thoughts? Yeah.
I remember early when I discovered porn and was exploring maybe darker things. Initially, there was a lot of guilt around it. And I was like, that's not okay. That's really dark. And I think now I've definitely been able to create that separation in my mind. Those are just like random fantasies that doesn't actually speak to what I believe or what I actually feel or what I want to do in practice.
Yeah, especially if you get into some of the, I don't like the word darker, but let's just go with that word for a second. You get into some of the darker fantasies, like so many, I can't remember the percentage, but so many women have a like non-consensual fantasy, as in like a rape fantasy. And that's something that they would never do in real life. Like,
Of course.
I don't think most people want to actually get raped and go through the trauma of that. But you fantasize about it. You're like, oh man, imagine if this guy was like overpowering me and it was so hot and, he would tie me up. Because there are elements sometimes of fantasies, and this might come up when you come up with your own bucket list of things you want to try. There might be some stuff on there that you think, man, like I can't put that on my list because I would never do that for real. But you can kind of explore that a little bit and say, why is this turning me on? And so in the example of a non-consensual fantasy, like you have a fantasy, maybe you're a woman that has a fantasy of being overpowered. Or for men, there's often a fantasy of, imagine a woman using me for my money. That one comes up quite a lot. There might be some element of that that really turns you on that you can, or you do want to safely explore. And so if we talk about a rape fantasy, maybe you think, well, I don't want to get raped, obviously, but I kind of like the idea of a man being stronger than me and overpowering me and me just having to submit and him just pleasuring me and doing wild things to me and seeing how turned on he gets that he can't even control himself. He just goes crazy. Like, I'm so sexy that he can't help but just go a little crazy. That might turn you on. Those things are things that you can actually explore. And you can figure out sort of safe, I guess, consensual, mutually beneficial ways of exploring those aspects. Like maybe you could try being blindfolded. Maybe you could try him tying you up so you can't move and you have a safe word. You know, you say, if I say green spaghetti, we have to stop. What a great safe word. I just came up with that right off the bat.
Fantastic.
You know, you might say red, whatever your safe word wants to, whatever you want to come up with. And we do it in this fun, safe, you know, easy to do, easy to stop way. And then I get to explore the little parts of that rape fantasy that I wanted without the trauma and the pain.
And this is why we are such big advocates of the sexual bucket list. Like we recommend that all of the time because it can be a really easy way to begin these conversations. If you kind of just write it down, you swap it, you're not like kind of at some random point just bringing up the question of, by the way, I have a rape fantasy. Do you want to talk about that? Whereas if you write it all down on paper, there's a big list of things that you both do it, then you can, I guess, more gently start that conversation without feeling
without
any
the pressure and the awkwardness.
Yeah, awkwardness or nervousness about actually bringing it up, starting that conversation. I think it's much easier to say like, hey, let's both like write out all of our fantasies, write a sexual bucket list, see what we're into, rather than starting the conversation of like, hey, I'm into this. Do you want to try this?
Hey, do you want to rape me? Yeah. Yeah. And you can just dive straight into fantasies. I've done that before. Like I've even done that on dates sometimes. You can be on a date and you can be like, so like, I'm curious, what stuff, we ask this question, as in we ask this question of women that we go on a date with. Even on the first date, we'll say, hey, what's some stuff that you want to try? And to be very clear, we make it very obvious that we're meeting for BDSM and, you know, we go on a first date and we all meet, we make sure there's chemistry, we talk about BDSM, we talk about some kinks that we might be into and stuff like that. We just sort of start this conversation going, and then the second time we'll meet up and we'll try some of that stuff. But yeah, we generally speaking just start nice and slow. We say, hey, what's one thing that you want to try? And usually the answer that you get is the very shy, tame answer. And so that's another conversation that we could have here right now. When you write this bucket list, I like to say it like this. A lot of people have two sexual bucket lists. The first one is the bucket list that they're willing to share with people. And then the second one is like some of the stuff that I really need to make sure you're okay with my first bucket list. And maybe I'll start gently telling you some of the stuff that's on my second bucket list. And so the first bucket list, like the one that you're a little more open to sharing might be things like, oh, I want to be blindfolded. You know, for a guy, it might be like, oh, I'd kind of love it if you just like spent an hour like strip teasing and teasing me. That'd be so sexy. Like the nice kind of like wholesome almost kink and BDSM.
I probably have 3.
Yeah, I have like 3 too. You have
like
different layers.
I have like the safe, the like exploratory, and then the pretty taboo, and I'm going to be quite cautious. Sharing that one.
And so you have like different layers almost of the bucket list. And I guess what we're saying here is don't feel like you have to share all of your kinks with someone immediately. And don't be surprised if when you say to someone, hey, here's my bucket list, what's on yours? They go, oh, I don't know. Like we've had that answer from so many women where they're like, oh, I don't know. Because they're really scared to share. They're scared that you'll be judgmental, that you'll think that less of them, that you'll think they're slutty or dirty or perverted or gross
and
or
I think
sinner.
Sometimes women genuinely just haven't thought about it that much.
Yeah, and lots of you listening might not have ever thought like, gee, what's some stuff I want to try? A lot of people just have missionary vanilla sex and nothing wrong with that. That can be incredibly romantic and intimate and beautiful and sensual. But some people just sort of haven't thought like, wait, can I try different stuff in the bedroom? I thought it's just penis goes in vagina, we kiss, one or both of us orgasm, and then we cuddle. I didn't realize that you could try blindfolds. I guess I never really thought about it. So.
And when you, Andy, asked me like years ago when we first started dating, you asked me to write a sexual bucket list. And I literally just sat down for about an hour, like trying to rack my brain for anything that might sound fun that I wanted to try. Yeah. And I think other ways that maybe if you are not feeling super creative, porn can be a good one, or like written erotica can be a good one. We like sex.com, where there's like lots of sexual gifts and you can explore lots of things there. Just getting creative. And again, sex toy shops can also be a fun one to spark the imagination.
Yeah, and talking with partners is obviously probably the easiest one because you know, we talked about writing your own bucket list and then having your partner or partners write their own lists as well. You can also just sit down together and like almost brainstorm. You can be like, all right, let's get a big piece of paper and a pen or do it on your laptop or phone. Let's like brainstorm. Would you ever be into blindfolds? Well, yeah, that could be fun. Okay, what about butt plugs? Oh, I don't know. You know, maybe. But the Bible says that, the anus is like the devil's passageway. So I'm not sure.
And I guess the point of all of this, like, why are you actually doing this? Like, why are you trying to find new things? I think for us, it's something that we've found has deepened our connection, our intimacy. Having a more fun, exploratory, fulfilling sex life means we connect better. It's getting the most out of sex.
Yeah, you and I have a very like self-improvement mindset about our relationship and our sex lives as well. I have as well for the last, this is like 8 or so years ago. I started having a very self-improvement mindset with my body, my relationship to my body, my sexuality, my orgasms, my pleasure, and then the pleasure of women that I was with. And I wanted to improve. I wanted to discover. I wanted to learn, to grow, to evolve. Again, self-improvement. And I would set little goals and I'd say, can I get decent at ropes? Can I get decent at blindfolds? Can I get decent at giving women orgasms? Can I get decent at making women squirt, which is something that I've gotten pretty good at. And that took a lot of practice. Like I didn't know how to do that shit at the start. Helping women orgasm. I didn't know how to help a woman orgasm. By the way, cheat code, just use a vibrator.
Yeah, to be fair, we almost never make women come without a vibrator.
Yeah, just cheat. Just use a vibrator. There you go. I just gave you the secret to life, any guys listening. And every woman listening is probably like, hell yeah, just use vibrators. Yeah, that's like the cheat code. Unless you think that, the Bible says vibrators are the devil's
Running out of ideas. aren't we?
pleasure centers. And if you're a little shy or nervous to write a whole big bucket list, maybe you're nervous to admit that to someone else, what you're into. Maybe you're nervous to admit it to yourself, what you might be into. You don't have to write a bucket list. I know this whole video has been us saying, here's how to write a bucket list, but if you want to, you're allowed to just write or come up with one thing that you want to try. You can take baby steps. And this is exactly how I learned kink and BDSM. I was nervous. I was shy. I was the most innocent, cute, adorable little boy who was like, I can't do that kinky stuff. Like, I'm not like that. That's perverted. That's weird. I could never be into that. And so I just tried one thing at a time. I was like, what if I tried blindfolds? And I got decent at that.
Yeah, we've thrown a lot of suggestions at you and given you lots of ideas. And that's like great if you wanted to like jump into things and go all in with it. But you can also just take little bits and pieces, do what you want to do, try one thing at a time and take your time with it.
Yeah, and you can add stuff to your checklist over time, which again is exactly what I did. I started with just blindfolds and I got decent at that. And then I was like, okay, what about oil and covering a woman in oil and giving her a nice, sensual, slow, gentle massage and teasing her? Okay, what if I listen to some music while I'm doing that? Like I put on some soft, gentle, like almost spiritual music, like yoga music or, African drum music and stuff like that. And I'll just give her this slow, almost tantric massage. And then we'll have really gentle, intimate, beautiful sex. What if I try a vibrator? And then I bought my first vibrator, big magic wand vibrator. And I slowly leveled up my game, so to speak. I guess practice. And I tried a bunch of different things over time.
Yeah, and it's about like if you begin with one thing that might then inspire you to then go on and try another thing. Again, it can be a very slow process that you can take completely at your own pace.
Yeah, and some people, that's how they learn BDSM or kink. Lots of my coaching clients, there's a woman in the coaching program right now that is kind of going through this. It's like she's just trying one thing at a time and adding up over time. And then I've had other clients that go all in and they're like, I'm going to buy every single toy that Andy and Imogen recommend. And I'm going to, do all of this at once. And I'm going to have this whole massive bucket list. And they write 50 different things. And some of the women that we've dated do the same thing. We'll say to them, hey, would you like to write a sexual bucket list? And they'll come back to us and they'll be like, okay, I've never done this before and this was so fun and here's 50 things on my bucket list. And we're like, whoa, holy shit. Okay, good, cool. You kind of did that. You came back to me when we first started dating and you had like a big list. Lots of things on that list.
Yeah, I definitely got the sense that you were that's the main reason that we met each other, to explore sexuality. You're already quite kinky. You made that very clear. So I was like, well, I may as well go for it and write a list that is as in-depth as possible. And thought of as many things as I possibly could.
Yeah, but again, do whatever you're comfortable with. And to be clear, you could watch this whole video and go like, these guys are weird and perverted. I don't want to do any like kinky stuff. I just want to have beautiful freaking missionary sex where we turn the lights off and, we pray to Jesus and
this video, if that's the case.
But if they are, like, more power to you. Do whatever you want. We're very big advocates, obviously, of doing whatever you want. And a lot of the time when we do videos about this seems to be a topic. I think human sexuality is a topic that people get very passionate about. And lots of the time there'll be some comment from someone saying like, how dare you tell me what to do? Like, stop saying there's a right way to do BDSM. despite the fact that in all these videos, we will say multiple times, there's no right way to do sex. There's no right way to do intimacy. Do whatever works for you and your partner. So we'll make that very clear. But yeah, at the end of the day, do whatever makes you happy. Do whatever makes your partner happy. Have some beautiful, kinky fun together. Would we like to end this with some examples from what's on our bucket lists?
Yeah.
To get those gears turning. All right, so the very first one is double, triple. No, I'm not.
We have like a written list somewhere. I can pull it up.
And bearing in mind, some of these are just things that we've already tried. So that's another thing to say about a bucket list. It can be stuff you haven't tried yet and you want to try, or it can be stuff that you've already tried and you know you're into. It doesn't just have to be like a bucket list that I haven't done yet. So probably the first one on our list is blindfolds.
Yeah, something really simple and easy, like getting tied up in any sort of way, just having like hands tied to the bedpost or like restrained above their head. And that can be with rope, that can be with tape, or that can just be with a scarf or a tie or something you have lying around the house.
Yeah, and the other person just spending time pleasuring you, making you feel amazing, maybe giving a massage with some oil. We really like that. We like turning the lights down, putting a little gentle music on, and just kind of taking our time. That's probably one of my funnest things as well. It might sound like it's not super kinky, but honestly, turning the lights off, and I know that's how a lot of people have sex, but we, generally speaking, pretty much always have sex with the lights on. We just have for whatever reason. And having the lights off can be a really kinky, fun, intimate experience because you're just feeling each other. It's more gentle, it's more sensual, it's more about kissing and making each other feel good and all of that beautiful stuff.
And if you do always have sex with the lights off, having the lights on.
Turn them on. Yeah.
Even other like simple things, like some people have never had shower sex, or some people like the idea of like trying sex in a public bathroom together or something like that. And role play can be another fun one, and that's like a whole rabbit hole to explore because there's about 1 million different role plays that you could probably think of. There's like teacher and student, there's like police officer, and like you've done something bad and you need to be punished, or you're trying to like get out of something bad that you've done. You can get very, very creative with that one.
There's obviously what's known as impact play, spanking, maybe using a paddle, something like that. Obviously a big one, and this is probably one of the things that people fantasize about the most, is group sex. So that could be a threesome, that could be 2 guys and a girl, could be, swinging, could be 2 women and a guy, could be an orgy, could be partner swapping, whatever you might want to do. But that's something that a lot of people are into, and obviously something that we do with the women that we date. There's some kinkier ones, things like pee play or water sports, where you pee on a partner or they pee on you.
Pet play as well, like pretending to be an animal. That can be very mild, just like a collar and leash, or it can get as full on as like eating food out of a bowl, things like that.
Obviously very rough sex, you could call it passionate, you could call it rough, whatever you want to call. Anal play might be something that's very kinky for a lot of people. You want to try that?
Yeah, and even going one step further than the rough is like having a more dominant, submissive kind of roles in the bedroom and like giving commands and taking the lead and very much like being at somebody's will.
Things like switching as well. So maybe you're usually the dominant person, you try being the more submissive person or letting the other person take the lead. For guys, there's things like prostate play, pegging, strap-ons, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, there's a whole massive world of different things that you can do out there. There's a wide gamut of human sexuality. As long as you are consenting and the other person is consenting and you're both having fun, go for it. And kind of the mindset that we have or that we advocate for is afterwards, so after you explore the sex together, do you feel better off? Like, do you feel like your self-esteem slightly went up, or like you're better off, you're happier and healthier and all of that sort of stuff? And does the other person feel better off? And if the answer to that question is no, like I actually feel a little bit worse, I feel a little bit of regret, I feel a little bit of like guilt or shame, then you can talk about it and you can figure out what to do and all of that kind of stuff. But if you feel better afterwards, go for it. As long as you're both consenting and you're having fun, great.
Yeah.
And if you would like any more help with this, with sex, with relationships, with money, with business, anything else, I offer coaching. I have $200 coaching calls. You can sit down with me and go over any questions you might have or any of that. We also have a hardcore coaching program. Links in the description below to both of those. As always, go out there, crush those goals, and be kinky as hell while you do it. If you've been wanting an amazing, awesome, elite sex life, tons of threesomes, plenty of wild adventures and great memories with awesome people, we would love to help you get there. Here's just a little bit of what our coaching clients have achieved in their time in the program. Renee had a threesome in just his 2nd week of coaching, had a woman write him a love letter, and he went on to have sex with 12 women in just 12 weeks of coaching. Corky had his first threesome, slept with 7 amazing women, and made a ton of awesome memories with them. George and Powell both had sex with 10 women each in their 12 weeks, had a bunch of wild adventures along the way. Join me and join them by clicking the coaching link in the description below.
No, I don't like. I hate it when you bring your hands on my head.
Leave that in.
No.
So cute. Do it. Leave that in.